Okay, today we're going to talk about evaluating piecewise functions. So piecewise functions, notice how we have two different pieces. Now you can have numerous pieces, 2, 3, 4, 5, doesn't really matter. But what I want you to notice first is that we have names here. We have f of x and g of x and h of x. And so this is called function notation, and we want to try to match the letter. So f of x is going to belong to f of 0. And g of x is going to belong to g of 5, and h of x is going to belong to h of -2. And so we want to make sure that we're using the correct piecewise function with what the question is asking us. So all we're doing today is evaluating. We're not graphing them yet. But when I want to evaluate g of 5, what I'm saying is that when I go to my piecewise function g of x, everywhere I have an x, I want to replace that with 5 and see what I get out as an answer. So my input is going to be 5, my output is going to be whatever that value is. Now you may say, well, I have two things. Do I plug them into both? No, you only use one. And how you decide which one you use is where you see it says if. So g of 5, I'm going to replace x with 5 in this top piece if and only if my x value is less than or equal to 3. Well, is 5 a number that's less than or equal to 3? No, 5 is larger than 3. So because 5 is greater than 3, then I'm going to use my second piece if and only if that x value given that I'm trying to find is greater than 3. So in here, I'm actually going to use this second piece. Now, because I figured out I'm using the g of x function, and because I'm using 5, which 5 falls into the domain of the second piece, I need to figure out what my output is. So I'm going to use 2x minus 1. But instead of 2x minus 1, I'm going to say 2 times 5 minus 1. So 2 times x, which in this case we're replacing x with 5, minus 1. 2 times 5 is 10, and then 10 minus 1 is going to give us 9. So what we're saying is that when x is 5, in this piecewise function of g of x, we are going to get an output of 9. This is one of those things that you need to practice multiple times. Let's do another one. So number 2, first picking out, okay, which graph am I going to use? Which piece am I going to use? Well, it's h. I look at h first. I have f, then g, then h. So let's go ahead and look at h. Okay, h of x. Now, what is my x? Well, my x is -2. So which piece does -2 belong into? Does -2 belong in this top piece, x less than or equal to -2, or does it belong in the bottom piece, x greater than -2? Now you might say, well, doesn't it belong in both because I see -2 in both? That's a good guess, but remember the difference between an open circle and a closed circle. Here, it cannot equal -2, but it can be a number larger than -2. Where here, it can be equal to -2, so in fact, I'm going to actually use this top piece. Now, I don't know if you can see that, it's kind of small, but what we have is 1/2 x minus 4. That is what that top piece is. And so we're going to replace x with -2. So really, I'm taking half of -2 and subtracting 4, and whatever that is, that's going to be my output. 1/2 of -2 is going to be -1. So -1 minus 4 is -5. So what we're saying is that when x is -2, in h of x, I'm going to get an output of -5. So that would be a point on that coordinate plane for that function h of x. Finally, I wanted to do one more because most people see 0 and they think that's not a number. But let's go ahead and take a look for f of 0. Now, f, I want to look for where f appears. It's going to be on this first one, f of x. So I'm looking at this piece and this piece only. Now, when x is 0, which piece does this fall into? Same thing as before, where it's going to be exactly the number. So I'm looking for where is it equal to 0? In the top piece or the bottom piece? Well, it's equal to 0 in the top piece. So I know that I'm going to use f of x, and I know I'm going to use my top piece, but notice how there's nothing to plug in here. This is called a constant. And so actually these are easier because you don't have to do any work. When it's just a number, we don't have variables to substitute or plug things in, then we can stop and our answer is going to be 3. Meaning this coordinate point is technically 0, 3. So when my input is 0, because it's equal to, my output is just going to be this value here, and so my output is going to be 3. So we will practice more in class, or for your teacher, they might have an assignment online or a worksheet, but this is how you evaluate piecewise functions.